Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. And as usual, I will remind you to join the mailing list just in case YouTube cuts me off or whatever. I will email you about where I'm posting next, etc. And also, don't forget to join the forums. I heard there's an email problem, so I'm going to be fixing that today. Apparently, the emails aren't sending properly, so that's with the forum. I guess somebody was trying to reset their password and the emails aren't sending. So I'll fix that. Working on it today. Okay, getting into the news. Let's get into it for the YouTube part of the show. This is fun to watch. Mr. Skelly, Adam Skelly, is talking about his lawsuit and talking about all like the big legal team that he's got set up. He's talking about, he's got a wild story to tell as well, talking about trying to keep his business open, keep people employed, people who didn't want to go on the CRB or anything to that effect. They wanted to just keep working. So he had a food truck and he put the food truck outside of his restaurant and the city tried to shut it down. Go watch this video. It's very interesting. He names his legal team, gives a little bit of insight into the strategy they're using, says the government can't counter the strategy, basically, I think. So great way to start the day. Very interesting. Very encouraging to hear. Mr. Skelly seems very upbeat and very not sure of himself. Just can't wait to get this process going, I think. He also talks about a party out in Calgary with a similar business or a business that's gone through similar things to him, a restaurant in Calgary that's refusing to close. Well worth the watch. Go check it out. Go check it out. Here is, I think this is very egregious, unbelievable. They arrested this guy on Christmas Day because he had a party on December 18th. He spent a night in jail on Christmas Day in 2020, and now the charges got thrown out. Wild, right? Like they're just messing with people. They're doing this to make you regret your choice, right? To make you never do it again. This is not freedom stuff. Here is a person, Doug Ford is calling for, he says, I'm extremely concerned about the new COVID variants making their way into Ontario. And this person is being fined for protesting. And the officer tells her, if you don't leave, I'm going to fine you. And she breaks down into tears and says, I just want to go back to work. I lost my business. I want to go back to work. I want to go work in my business that I lost. And the officer, fines her or whatever. But this interaction is just cold. Like the lockdowns to protect us from COVID-19 do a lot of collateral damage, as illustrated here, as illustrated in Adam Skelly's video, as illustrated in this guy was having a loud party, right? And they threw him in jail on Christmas Day. We are living, this is a very big departure from the free society we thought we lived in 2015, 2016, or 2014, right? People painted Harper as a tyrant and a bad guy, right? Terrible Stephen Harper. Well, now let's compare, right? Very interesting stuff. Yesterday as well, Sheila Gunn-Reid was out in watching the trial of Pastor Coates, and it is very interesting reading. He was up on the stand, so he's being cross-examined, and that his answers are very interesting. I highly recommend. The only link I can give you is just go to her Twitter account and then scroll down, because it's not in a thread that I can see. She's just doing tweets as it's happening. So just scroll through her thread, and it's all day yesterday, and she'll be doing it again today. And it's got, important quotes and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I mean, really very interesting. But this is a pastor who spent 35 days in jail because he was resistant to the public health orders. And do they have the right to do that? This is Canada, right? The right to worship is written into the charter. So do they have a right to do that? I don't know. The government and the courts are deciding that during this case. It reads it's a very interesting thing to read. My attention was taken with it yesterday. I was like, wow, this is wild. So I read it. It's very interesting. Yesterday was also Canada's Journalist Day, or World Press Freedom Day. And Justin Trudeau says, journalists are any democracy's first line of defense, and they help keep us safe and informed. We've certainly seen that through the pandemic. Today, let's celebrate the role they play and thank them for the work they do. World Press Freedom Day. World Press Freedom Day. Andrew Lawton responds, remember when you banned me from covering your campaign and then had police detain me for trying? Or when your party had another city's police remove me from a public event? Or when your foreign minister blocked me from her media freedom press conference? That one was my favorite. Huh. The hypocrites in our government are, I mean, like, again, a lot of this show is pointing out what they say and saying, can you believe this crap? Can you believe this crap? And not Andrew Lawton, Justin Trudeau, right? World Press Freedom Day, so long as we are the ones paying the press for their opinions. And if they say something we don't like, we make sure that gets fixed ASAP. Huh. Right? Right, Trudeau? Yeah. 5 ministers who should be punted from cabinet. The obvious one is missing. 5 ministers who should be punted. 1, Saijan. 2, Hadu. 3, Gellibo. 4, Blair. 5, Anand, right, the procurement minister. Am I missing anyone? Trudeau? Trudeau? No? Like the guy who appointed all of those idiots? No? Anybody? Trudeau. Come on, everyone. Jeepers creepers. But then we'd be left with Freeland. And I mean, she's not winning an election, right? She's not winning an election with that mom head tilt, right? It's just not happening. I'm sorry. Speaking of Justin Trudeau, in the last 7 days, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole has spent $71,000 on Facebook ads. All $71,000 ad spend was spent on promoting his recently announced climate change plan. I mean, it's funny because if he had any kind of platform that resonates, he wouldn't need to spend the money, or the money would be well spent. But as it is, the money is not well spent. And it's $70,000. $70,000 pushing the climate initiatives. This is the same initiatives that Trudeau is pushing, basically. And it's actually worse than Trudeau's. Because at least Trudeau's, you can spend the money on what you want. In O'Toole's plan, it's he gets to choose what you get to spend the money on. Right? Welcome to Canada. We'll just make that decision for you, okay? The Toronto Sun, this is Laurie Goldstein, says, Trudeau is using the pandemic to undermine democracy. This is like a year late, isn't it? Like this time, May of 2020, it was pretty obvious that's what was happening, right? And so a year later, the Sun catches up. I don't know. Pretty slow on the draw there, guys. Here is one more example of our impeccable government and their aversion to answering questions they don't like. Minister, could you stay, please, Minister? We've got other questions, and there's a lot of people who want to ask a question. Oh, Minister, stop walking out. Okay, she's gone. That's exactly. That was my interpretation of what happens. Okay, here it is.
So appreciate everyone's interest. Thank you.
Minister, can you stay a little longer? There are more reporters on the phone line, and this is a very important issue. Give any more time.
And we have questions from the floor, Minister. We have 2 questions from the floor, and we have people on the line that would like to ask more questions. I'm wondering why you're running out.
I'm wondering why you're running out. And she's gone. Yes, sorry, everyone. You need to understand in covering this government that they just don't answer questions they don't like. And if they don't like a question that you ask, they may just walk out of the room. They won't answer you. They won't give you an indication of what happened or, what rule you broke or anything to that effect. They'll just leave. And because humans function in a constant state of amnesia, you'll forget. And then the next time you want to ask a question or something like that, you'll ask it and they'll walk out of the room and you'll say, I wonder why that happened. There's no accountability. That's why that happened. There's no accountability. Nobody's going to follow up with that. Nobody. Her boss is saying, good move. That was quick. You got all those questions answered and everybody was happy. You walked right out that room. No problem, right? The boss is not going to be upset with us, right? The boss isn't going to be upset because the boss would do exactly the same thing. No accountability, right? And what are you going to do? You call their numbers. I've called their numbers. I've got recordings on my phone because I call when I'm walking on my treadmill. So I've got recordings on my phone about answering machines saying, thank you for calling this office of this minister. Please leave a message. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And then it goes to the answering machine and it says, this mailbox is full. That's been weeks of that. This mailbox is full. Do they clear out the mailboxes? How often? Oh, it's COVID. It's COVID. That's the reason you're busy, right? Sure it is. Mr. O'Toole, Aaron O'Toole, leader of the conservative wing of the Liberal Party, says if the Prime Minister is telling the truth and he wants Canadians to believe that he had no knowledge of the evidence of sexual misconduct against General Vance, he will fire his Chief of Staff. I was talking the other day about complicated things. I was talking the other day about how people won't follow 3 bouncing balls. If you can explain it to somebody in one fell swoop, right, that's good. If you can say this and then this and you explain it, that's better. But if there's 3, you've lost them. You have to understand this and this before we can get to this. Gone. People don't want to understand it. They've been incentivized to ignore it because it's probably too complicated, right? They'll go back to the thing that they were doing before. It's just how it is. I wish that it wasn't, but it is. And so O'Toole framing it this way gets people lost. They don't know what he's even talking about. This is about Vance, right? He's calling for Telford to be fired because Trudeau didn't know about this. He's giving Trudeau credence. He's basically running cover for Trudeau on this by calling for Telford's head. And I think that it's interesting that in order to take the fall for Saijan allowing Vance to get a promotion after Vance took advantage of somebody under his command and fathered 2 children with them. Is that taking advantage if you father 2 children? Like you need 2 anyway, regardless, there's a lot of details that I'm just really fuzzy on with this whole thing, right? And it's a Me Too and blah, blah, blah. But giving the guy a raise and knowing about all that, and if your Chief of Staff knows, you should probably know. And if the Chief of Staff didn't tell Trudeau, then Trudeau should be dealing with that. But having Mr. O'Toole basically run the cover and say, if she didn't tell you, like it seems like she didn't tell you because you don't know about this, you said, you should fire her. That's like, if you're the CEO of a very important company and somebody like lies to you or doesn't tell you something at that level of importance, there's no question. You fire that person. Like there's no question. It's not like the other board, the competing guy for SEO is like, or for the CEO is like, hey man, you should fire that person. They lied to you. Like, if you're not competent enough as the leader, and is Justin Trudeau competent enough as the leader? If you're not competent enough as the leader to fire that person, then you shouldn't be the leader, right? And regardless of what now that it's out of the bag, regardless of whether she did that to protect him or whatever, it's the optics now. You have to get rid of that person. But, right? Having O'Toole fight for that, it seems like it's a proxy for not talking about the loss of our civil liberties, the lockdowns, all of the rest of the stuff that they're not talking about, right? This is an easy get her to protect Justin Trudeau and Saijan and Vance, right? See you later. This is the pattern of this feminist government, right? Je suis féministe under the bus, right? Or I'm not going to try the French version. Okay. Anyway, regardless, I think that it's weird. Defense committee meeting canceled after Tories call for Telford to be fired. So I said the other day, the Liberals would go to an election just to get control of the committees. They have control of the committees anyway. They'll have to pay the piper at some point, and the piper on this one may just be an election. Who knows? I don't know. But they're canceling meetings when the Tories are asking for accountability. There's no accountability. And do I think that the Tories... I don't think that the Tories are doing... They're trying to cut down a tree by chopping at its big branches, right? And not even the big branches, the kind of big branches, right? Like, we'll get to this tree at some point. There might be some necessity to chop down the big branches, but if the goal is to chop the tree down, right? And they're missing what their base is looking for, massively, and like aggressively, like they're purposely not addressing it. This, I think, is funny, talking about Vance, right? This is Pablo Rodriguez yells, "Oh, F," during question period. But what he says is, "Oh, F, did you say that to Saijan?" Which I think in context is really interesting. What was he talking about? Here we go.
Mr. Speaker, I have all the respect for work done.
Did you send it to Saijan?
Order.
Oh, did you say that to Saijan? I wonder. I mean, man, I wonder what they're talking about. You know who's having an enjoyable time watching this mess unfold? Mark Norman, who just took a job with the Canadian Defense Review.com. Right? Vice Admiral retired Mark Norman, former Vice Chief of the Defense Staff, has joined Samuel Associates as Senior Defense Strategist. Read more. And Mark Norman weighs in. He says, I'm excited to join the Samuel Associates team and look forward to working with their talented and dedicated professionals as they advise and support defense, naval, and security clients. Man, yeah, there's interesting things happening in that realm, and I wish Mr. Norman luck. I hope that this employer treats him better than the last one did. Right? So, yeah, let's talk about free speech, and then we're going to talk about Line 5 and Highway 413 before we head over to the redacted part of the show. Okay, Blacklock's reporter is reporting. Records show that Mr. Gellibo got help from paid lobbyists subsidized with $375,000 paid by his department, that's our taxpayer dollars, the Heritage Department, in defending the YouTube censorship bill. He had people call other people fearmongers for having concerns with the bill. Can you believe that? Of course you can believe that. Gellibo should be fired, says Dean Sequoio. I got that probably wrong. The Globe and Mail says liberals pledge new amendments to the Broadcasting Act to address the concerns over the social media posts. And I'll show you what. Oh, this is the statement. A further explanation on Bill C-10 and social media. We'll get to that in just a second. This is Aaron O'Toole jumping into this Bill C-10 fight, and the NDP are pledging to vote with the Conservatives to kill the bill. So that's, I think it's coming together with regard to this thing's not going to see the light of day. But Gellibo continues to say, you've misunderstood, right? I think it's a version of you're protesting too much. At the beginning, he said that it was important that there was amendments or protections for user-generated content like this video, right? Like whatever you post on Facebook or TikTok or whatever other social media you use. He said it was important to have those protections in. And then he removed those protections, saying that, no, it's only when they're acting like a broadcaster, like when they're streaming YouTube. And so he got really flustered when there was a news person, an anchor, pushing back and saying, well, why were they important in the first place to have them in? And you said they were important, and now they're not important. What changed? And he couldn't answer the question, and typical liberal style went back to just saying his talking points, which were that it's not necessary, right? So this is a clarification of that. It still doesn't make it okay. I think the bill stinks. I think that there's no fixing a bill like this. But my concern is we're going to go to an election, and the bill is going to be back, and they're going to have a majority, and they're not going to need anybody else to pass it. So that's problematic, and I hope that doesn't happen. But here we are dealing with this today. So this is Gellibo's statement. Further explanation on Bill C-10. The original version of C-10 dealt with social media in two ways. Section 2.1 provides that individuals who upload content on social media platforms such as Facebook or TikTok aren't considered broadcasters. That means you and I can't be regulated by the CRTC. We've kept that clause. Section 4.1 excluded social media platforms from the category of broadcasters based on the testimonials heard during the committee process. We realize that the exclusion was too broad, as it excluded platforms like YouTube when they act as music streamers. That's why we removed 4.1, but we also want to make sure that the content that people upload on social media won't be considered programming under the Act, and that it won't be regulated by the CRTC, and that's why we'll be bringing forward another amendment that will make this crystal clear. So they're saying that they're backing down, that the Liberals are at least saying they're backing down on having user-generated content included in regulation of the CRTC. So that's a win, I suppose, if the language that he's promising actually ends up in the bill. And he says that Section 2.1 of the bill provides that individuals who upload content on Facebook and TikTok, but not YouTube, right? So I still think they're trying to play games. I still think they're trying to massage the language enough so that people will, that the outcry will die down, right? Because Canadians are getting less tolerant and more angry, more outwardly angry. People are doing videos. Greg did a video about the internet censorship stuff. So the fact that those people who are organizing to fight back against this is a good thing. The government is listening, apparently, but we'll see if the proof is in the pudding when we see the rest of the bill. But again, good news that the Conservatives and the NDP will be voting against the bill. Line 5, if Line 5, so moving into Line 5, this is more Ontario than other places, but if Line 5 shuts down, we'll see a rapid example of the effects of carbon tax. Gas prices will skyrocket. Anything delivered using gas will increase dramatically in price. Many won't be able to afford gas for recreation. You'll just use gas for work. Travel and tourism will reduce. What else? And we've been under this lockdown, artificial lockdown, but what if they could use this crisis to their advantage? And what if a tank full of gasoline, or what if gasoline costs double or triple what it costs now, right? And I've heard $2 gas. I've also heard $3 to $5 gas. Who knows? And rations, right? If we lose half of our gas to the province in the short term, if Line 5 shuts down and half of our gas to the province, I think the priority is maintaining the food prices and the food delivery. So you subsidize the food trucks gas at the expense of consumer gas, and maintain the food prices, and you limit the shock that way, in my opinion. But maybe I'm not looking at everything. But it's a disaster any way you slice it. The other thing that I've heard, though, is that this is going to be tied up in legal battles for years, right? And I think that this is on the next tab. But I think that that's worth mentioning, right? Like, I don't know what's going to happen on May 12th. We're all going to find out soon, right? This is the tweet that says it'll be tied up in legal battles for years. I don't know. I have no idea. The thing that concerns me is, though, what if they turn it off and say, okay, well, now that it's off, the legal battles can continue for years, and maybe if you guys win, then we'll turn it back on. Right? I hope that doesn't happen, but could be tied up for legal battles for years, right? Dan McTeague is responding. If you were a betting man, Dan, what do you think is the chance Line 5 gets shuttered even for a short period of time? Dan says yes, but not immediately. So he doesn't think it's going to happen on the 12th. John McEwen says likely ends up in court for years, right? I just hope they don't turn it off before it ends up in court. In Ontario, Doug Ford is being targeted by the Trudeau government for building the Highway 413. And so Emma McIntosh says the federal government has decided it will step in and take over the environmental assessment of the Ford government's Highway 413 project. This is huge news. Many believe this decision will effectively kill the project, as the Fed EA environmental assessment is much more rigorous. And that was built in, like the federal environmental assessment, I think, was built into the plan anyway. But Ivana Yelich says, if this was actually about the environment and not pure politics, I'd encourage Stephen Del Duca and others to read the analysis provided to the federal minister, which says any concerns are expected to be dealt with through existing processes. So, I mean, it's interesting because Del Duca is saying that he's happy. He says, I'm pleased that the federal governments step up and provide real leadership on protecting Ontario's natural environment. So in addition to stymieing the building of a highway, which creates jobs and is a jobs program in and of itself, and is an infrastructure program which will create further jobs, the federal government is stopping that, as well as the Line 5 pressure, which is not so good, right? Like, that's very, very concerning, right? So economically, Doug Ford is being hamstrung economically. Even for decisions that are usually his to make, he's being hamstrung by the federal government. Isn't that interesting? The timing of that is interesting, isn't it? So now we're going to move over to the redacted part of the show, because I'm going to talk about things that YouTube does not like me to talk about. And, well, it's a good time for that. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. And if you want to, head over to Rumble or BitChute or Odysee to watch the rest of the show, where I talk about things that will make YouTube's ears bleed. Okay. Have a good day.